Today's daf is daf Lamed Hey, and we'll start 4 lines down from the top of the Amud. And the Gemara quotes the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, "B'shachar hayalovesh plusin shel shmona sarmona." The Kohen Gadol had 2 occasions in which he went in lifnai v'lifnim into the Kodesh Kadashim, b'bigdei lavan, in the linen garments. There was one time he went in the morning, and that was for the Aktar Sektoris and the Azos of the Domim. And then later on in the day, he went in a second time, Lahotzi Kaf Umachta. The Mishnah records the price that was paid to purchase the very, very expensive imported linen. And in the case of Shachar, they spent as much as 18 mana, which is an awesome sum of money. And they imported this linen, special linen from Plusin. Later on in the afternoon, the Kohen Gadol would wear a different set of bigdei lavan of linen garments, and they were worth only 12 mana. And then the Mishnah calculates that the total amount of money that was spent for these 2 sets of bigdei lavan was 30 mana. So we add the 18 together with the 12, and we get 30 mana. And the Rambam Shita is that all this money was spent just on the ksonis itself. That was the main beged. So the Gemara asks the obvious question: Tana minyana asel ashmeinon. I know how to count 18 and 12 and come to 30. Why did the Mishnah feel compelled to make that calculation for us? Is there some sort of separate halacha, the number 30? And the Gemara answers, Hakam Mashmalon, de botzer mihani lo navid, that the amount of money that should be spent is 30 mana, not more, not less. Now, when I say not more, if the Kohen Gadol would like to spend more money, that comes out of his pocket. That's his own private contribution. The halacha will determine how much of the communal funds from the Trumas Halishka we will draw forth in order to purchase the bigdei lavan. And the maximum number that you can take from the community, from the Trumas Halishka, is 30. But once again, the Mishnah did not have to calculate it 30. But the Gemara says that ha'i botzer mihani utvei mihani leslan ba. There actually is a chiddush in calculating the number 30. And what the Mishnah is trying to teach us is that we have these 2 numbers, but those are not absolute. What is absolute is the number 30, meaning the total addition of these 2 numbers. Each one of these numbers is only a suggestion. For example, if instead of spending 18 mana on the morning garments and 12 on the afternoon garments, the decision was made to spend only 15 mana on the morning garments and 15 mana on the afternoon garments. I'm not sure if that's a great example, because the sugya seems to assume, which we'll get to later, that there should be some superior quality, a better quality for the morning bigdei lavan as opposed to the afternoon bigdei lavan. And we'll explain why that is later. So let's give a different set of numbers just to make it a little bit clearer. Let's reduce it in the morning from 18 down to 16, and we'll jack it up in the afternoon from 12 to 14. Now we have 16 plus 14, it's 30. And that's what the Mishnah wants to tell me. Don't get hung up dafka on these numbers 18 and 12. Maintain a total number of 30. And also maintain a superior, more expensive expenditure for the morning set of bigdei lavan than for the afternoon. Now, in the Mishnah itself, we find a dispute, we find a dissenting view of Rabbi Meir. Until now, we've been focused totally, exclusively on the sheet of the Chachamim. Rabbi Meir, on the other hand, was of the opinion that with regard to the expenditure for the morning set of Big Day Lavan, it was 12 mana, whereas for the afternoon, it was 800 zuz. So the Gemara now says the following. Dekule alma mias, there's one fundamental principle that is unanimously accepted by both Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim. The shachar adifi, that will spend more money for higher quality linen in the morning than for the linen in the afternoon. Minolan. What is the basis in the Torah for this conclusion, this principle, that the morning Big Day Lavan have to outshine, if you will, the afternoon Big Day Lavan? At this point, the Gemara is not operating with svara, with logical analysis, but simply with psukim. Amar Rav Huna Breid Rav Hila. Now, in order to appreciate Rav Huna's derivation, we'll quote the pasuk in Parshas Achrayos. It says, "Ksones bad kodesh yilbash." So we have the word bad, and then it says, "U'michnasei bad." Number 2, "Yu al basaro." Number 3, "U'be'avnei bad yachkor, u'b'mitznefes bad yitznov." So the word bad appears 4 times in this one pasuk, describing the Big Day Lavan. And the Gemara says, "Muvchar bebad." The Torah repeats the word bad 4 times over to indicate that this should be a superior quality linen. Now, we're going to see, Mirz Hashem in the Mefarshim, what's the significance of the number 4? Why did the Torah feel compelled to repeat itself not once, not twice, not thrice, but 4th time? Now we turn to Daf Lamed Hey Amud Beis, and the Gemara says Meisvei. What do we do with a pasuk in Sefer Yechezkel? And Yechezkel actually described what went on at the time of the Beis Hamikdash and the Avodah and the entry of the Kohen Gadol Lifnai v'Lifnim. And here are the words of Yechezkel HaNavi. He says, "V'lovshu b'gadim acherim." And what this means is that when the Kohen Gadol would go in on Yom Kippurim, he would wear Big Day Lavan, and these were different than the b'gadim that he wore during the course of the entire year, which was Big Day Zav. And it would seem that what Yechezkel was describing is b'gadim acherim. Even within Yom Kippur, during the Avodah, and the unique begadim that the Kohen Gadol wore, even within that, there were begadim acherim. Within the framework of Yom Kippurim, there were 2 sets of begadim. Now, when you use the word begadim acherim, the Gemara assumes that it means a superior quality. Then the pasuk says, "Lo yikadju es ha'am bibigdeihem," and this is a reference to the end of the day of Yom Kippurim, when the Kohen Gadol completed his avodah, and he would spend some time with the people. Keep in mind that it was a yontif for him, that he survived, that he brought kapara for Klal Yisrael, and within the context of that celebration, if you will, or that social intercourse with the people around him, the pasuk testifies that he would wear bigdeya. Bigdeya means their clothing, meaning the ordinary clothing, what we call bigdei chol. So after he finished the avoda, he would remove his bigdei kodesh, and he would don his bigdei chol. My love, the Gemara thinks that acherim chashuvim mihem. If Yechezkel is describing the avoda and the wearing of begadim, changing from this set to that set in a chronological order, sequentially, ending up with the bigdei chol that he wears at the end of the day, then it's logical to assume that Yechezkel has one set of begadim that's earlier than the begadim acherim, and therefore the first set of begadim are those that are worn by the Kohen Gadol Shachar when he first goes into the Kodesh Kodashim, and then he changes into begadim acherim in the afternoon when he goes in again to the Kodesh Kodashim, this time to remove the kafu machta. But the Gemara assumes that when you say acherim, you're really going up a level. And that is against everyone in that Mishnah, whether it's Rabbi Meir or the Chachamim, both agree that we go down a level, not up a level. So the Gemara answers, low. You misinterpreted the word acherim as it was used in Yechezkel Hanavi. Chusamihem. What the word acherim means is not that we go up one level, but rather that we go down a level. And you go from the highest down to the lowest. The lowest being, at the end of the day, finish the avoda, he's wearing his bigdei chol. The highest are the qualitatively superior begadim that he wears in shachar, in the morning. And then begadim acherim, a lower level of begadim, not as such high quality, that he wears in the afternoon for the second time that he enters into the Kodesh Kadosh. Tani Rav Huna bar Yehuda, the Amrile Rav Yehuda bar Yehuda. We have now a brisa, and the brisa says the following: Achar shekolsa avodas tzibur. Now, this brisa introduces a distinction within the context of the avoda of the Kohen Gadol and Yom Kippurim between avodas tzibur and avodas yachid. And Rashi and others will explain the difference between the two. But achar shekol avodas hatzibur, once the Kohen Gadol had completed the so-called category of avodah called avodas hatzibur, at that point, he would be permitted to wear a set of begadim that was actually manufactured by his mother. And this was apparently a custom back in the day, during the Beis Hamikdash time, that the mother of the Kohen Gadol would spend lots and lots of money and tremendous amounts of effort to produce a set of begadim, or according to the Rambam, a kones, the so-called tunic in English, for the sake of her son, the Kohen Gadol. And achar shekol avodas hatzibur, now that the Kohen Gadol has completed the avodah of the tzibur, he's now going to implement the avodas yachid, is Kohen sha'asalo imo ktones lovsha the ovid ba avodas yachid. For the avodas yachid, he's permitted to wear those begadim that were created by his mother. For the avodas hatzibur in the morning, he's not allowed to do that. The avodas hatzibur in the morning requires that the money that was spent on his begadim was taken from the trumas halishka, not from any private source of someone's bank account. It's got to be taken from the trumas halishka, because anything that serves in the Beis Hamikdash on behalf of the tzibur has to be funded by the communal monies that are earmarked for karbanos tzibur and avodas tzibur in the trumas halishka. Privately owned funds cannot be used for public avodah. But now that the Kohen Gadol is shifting from avodas hatzibur and he's ready now to embark upon avodas yachid, now the funds for his begadim, in this case the bigdei lavan, would come from private, or could come from private sources, in this case from his own mother. Ubelvad she'im tzarena letzibur. Now, this is a bit of a paradox. We just finished saying that now the Kohen Gadol is embarking on avodas yachid, and yet when he takes the begadim that his mother created in order to wear them for the so-called avodas yachid, the brisa requires, we have to guarantee that these begadim are transferred over. There's a monetary transaction to the tzibur, and they're owned by the tzibur. But you just finished telling me that now he's about to embark on avodas yachid. But the answer is that avodas yachid is a relative term. It doesn't mean literally yachid. Whatever the Kohen Gadol does in the Beis Hamikdash is on behalf of the tzibur, and even the avodas yachid is for the tzibur. However, the avodas yachid relative to avodas tzibur is on a lower level, so to speak. So what is avodas yachid in this context? And the answer is, this is the second time that the Kohen Gadol goes in lifnai v'lifnim. The first time he goes in lifnai v'lifnim, he, through the Ketores, is going to bring about the great kapara for all of Klal Yisrael. This is the crucial avoda on behalf of the tzibur to generate a kapara for the entire tzibur. We have to be very careful. A lot hinges here on this avoda lifnai v'lifnim in the morning hours of the Ketores. And we can be a little bit more laid back about taking chances, I'll explain, with regard to the second time he goes into the Kodesh Kodashim in order to take out the kaf umachta. Because relative to the morning, where he's really effectuating the kapar for Klal Yisrael, in the afternoon, he is taking care of the Kodesh Kodashim, making sure that the kaf umachta should not be left around. It's a great mix of covered hashchina, but it's not the essential kapara of the tzibur that is contingent upon that avoda. So relative to the morning avoda of the Torah, we call this avodas yachid. And here we can take a little more of a chance. Surely the avoda in the afternoon of hotzas kaf umachta requires big day kodesh. There's no question about it. This is one of the the 4 times that he changes back and forth before he goes back into his big day chol. But nevertheless, so therefore it requires as any big day kahuna, requires that it be purchased from tzibur money. But we in the afternoon, because it's relatively less critical of an avoda, there's not that much at stake, we can be laid back about it, rely on the mother of the Kohen Gadol that she would have given with her full heart, transferred ownership over these expensive begadim to the tzibur. And by doing so, it now belongs to the tzibur. I'll just read to you a note here. He says that the removing of the kaf umachta from the Kodesh Kodashim is called a private avoda. Why? Because it's not needed, it's not absolutely critical for the kapar of the tzibur. It's the Kohen Gadol's obligation to clear out the kaf umach. And since this avoda, although it's part of the avoda of the tzibur of Yom Kippurim, and it must be performed in Big Day Kodesh, in this case, going in Big Day Lavan, and therefore the monies and the actual ownership over the begadim must be transferred over to the treasury, the lishkas trumas halishka of the tzibur. But nevertheless, we can rely on the fact that that was achieved and that it was transferred properly over to the tzibur. The Gemara says pshita. After all, since the avoda, as we dubbed it, yachid, is not so critical for the kapara, we should certainly have understood on our own that we can be more makel about it. More answers. Malditem, I would have thought, nechush shemaloyim seredi yofa yofa. We still require Big Day Kahuna, and Big Day Kahuna must be purchased and owned by the tzibur. Now we're afraid she may want to psychologically show off. Look, these are my begadim. I purchased them at a tremendous price, and I spent who knows how long producing, manufacturing these begadim. They're glorious, they're beautiful, all for the honor of my son, who's the Kohen Gadol. And she might not have that yafi of that complete 100% a das makne, a serious and absolute desire to transfer them over to the tzibur. Kamash Malan will rely on her that she'll, out of the goodness of her heart, she will transfer it over to the public. And now, once the Gemara has mentioned the custom in that time about a mother of the Kohen Gadol creating Big Day Lavan and then transferring it over to the tzibur, the Gemara tells us the following discussion. Amru Olav al Rabbi Shmuel ben Pabi, Asasolo imo ksodes shel me'amon. So this is Rabbi Shmuel, the Kohen Gadol. His mother spent 100 mana. Imagine, even according to the Chacham and Mishnah, for the most expensive begadim of Chachar, they spent 18 mana. She spent 100 mana. The lovsha, the ovid ba'avodas yachid, and Rabbi Shmuel would wear these begadim on Yom Kippur for the avodas yachid, meaning when he went lifnai v'lifnim for hotas, kaf umachta, umisara litzibur. And both he and presumably his mother beforehand had full das makna to transfer the ownership over these begadim, these beautiful, glorious begadim, 100 mana, over to the tzibur. And there's an insight here I mentioned of the Zevach Toda. The Brisa, in a sense, seems to say that, it's perfectly okay and acceptable to spend so much money for an avodas yachid of removing the kafu machta. It's strange because the Mishnah says that the maximum number of money should be 30, but the truth is the maximum number of 30 means that's how much we can charge the lichkas, the trumas halishka. Amar Lava Rabbi Loza ben Harson, another case of a very wealthy mother creating Big Day Lavan, beautiful, expensive Big Day Lavan, on behalf of her son, the Kohen Gadol Rabbi Loza ben Harson. However, it didn't pass the grade. Lo imo ksones mishtei ribu, excuse me. She spent 20,000 mana. I can't even imagine in our terms, how much that would be worth. But the Kohanim put their foot down, they vetoed him wearing these begadim. And the reason for that is that these begadim were woven so fine that mipnei shenira bi'or, they were actually see-through. You could see the outlines of his body through these begadim. That's how sheer they were. And that's an insult to the Kahuna Gedola and to the Avoda, to see his body underneath the linen. The Gemara says, is this physically possible? Is it possible to weave such garments that would be see-through? Va'omar mar chutam kafel shisha. The Big Day Kahuna had to have threads that were made up of 6 different threads. They were very thick. And this is based on a Gemara later on in Daf Ayin Aleph. The Gemara describes how thick the threads were, and they were woven with threads made of 6 finer threads. It's literally impossible, the Gemara thinks, that these begadim could have been transparent. Abai says, yes, they could be transparent. They were woven so well and so fine. And he gives a mashal. He says, Kechamra b'mizga. And you could see through it like wine in a glass cup. Glass, of course, is transparent, but even if the glass is very thick, nevertheless, it still remains transparent. You can see through. So there were no spaces in the weave of the priestly garments of these big day kahuna. The linen was so fine that it was transparent. Now, the balance of this daf today is an agadita based on a brisa, and it's all about spending a lot of money by a wealthy person. Here's the case. Ani Ashiv Russia, Boyin Ladun, after 120 years in the heavenly courts, 3 individuals came up for the judgment of the angels up on high. And one of them was a poor person, the other was a wealthy person, the third person was a wicked person. Leoni, the poor person, they address him and they say, why didn't you dedicate your time to the study of Torah? You know, the records indicate that you spent close to 0 time on Torah study. Im Omer Ani Hayisi, his obvious self-defense argument will be, I was poor, I was spending every minute of my time trying to get my funds together. Omer Lo, we answered to him, wait a second, let's point to Hillel. Klum Ani Ayisa Yosef Hillel. Do you know how poor Hillel was? Omer Lo Val Hillel Zakish Yom Yom Hayose Umistaker Betrapik. He earned a trapik, and Chetzio Hayanosei L'Shomer Beis HaMedrash. He had to spend half of it on a daily basis to gain entry into the study hall. They had to keep up the study hall. They had to pay for the, they didn't have electricity, but for the candles and so forth and study. Probably give some money to the Talmidei Chacham who were studying there. But in any event, he would spend half his money on entry into the Beis HaMedrash. By the way, this undermines the basic principle that we see in the Gemara Ksubis and elsewhere. One shouldn't spend more than 20% of his funds, of his assets. But in his case, Hill felt this was a matter of life and death. The other half of his daily wage, he would dedicate to support his family. Very small amount of money. He couldn't earn any money. That day they had no work for him. They would not give him entry into the Beis HaMedrash. He climbed up to the roof. There was a skylight there, so that he would put his ear to the skylight, to the window. The 2 greats of their time, and he would try to hear every word. We found in the records, also at Yom Erev Shabbos, it happened to be a winter short Friday. That day that Hillel didn't have enough money, he had to climb up to the skylight. Tkufas Teve Saisa, and it was a winter day. The yard of Shelag ben Shamayim, unawares of what's going on around him, Hillel was snowed in. Sha'ol Abud Shachar, daybreak. Amalo Shmaya Avtali, when they came in to the Beis HaMedrash, Shmaya Turas Avtali says, Avtali Nafi, my brother, B'choyam Abayis Meir, we usually have sunlight coming in through the skylight. Vayom Ofer, why is it dark? Shema Yom Me'unanu, is it a very cloudy day? Hitzitzu Eineim, V'ro Dmus Adam Baruba. They realized that there was an outline of a figure, of a human figure, up there in the skylight. Olu, they immediately climbed up. Matzu of Rum Sholosh Amos Shelet. They found that the snow had piled up 3 amos. I don't even remember from my youth in New York. There was one time we had snow drifts, I think, that were close to 10 feet high. Praku, they took him down He was literally frozen. Hirchitzuhu, they put him into warm water, and it would seem that they violated the Shabbos. They thought it was pikuach nefesh. V'sichu, they anointed him with oil. Oshivu keneged amidora, they put him next to the hot fire, and Amru, they declared, Roy zeh lechalal olves Shabbos. For such a person, we should violate the Shabbos. I mean, the Mefarshim, we have a lot of trouble. What do you mean for such a person? For any Jew, we violate the Shabbos if it's pikuach nefesh. What were they dramatizing here? That we're going to violate the Shabbos for such a person, for someone as great as Hillel, implied for someone else they would not. So there's a commentary here of the Ben Yehoyada that perhaps we would apply the principle that someone who deliberately decided to endanger his life, he made the decision on his own, he might have the gather of Ma'abed Atzon L'das. Maybe we don't override the Shabbos. Now, the truth is that they didn't desecrate the Shabbos. There was no actual Chilul Shabbos. The fire had been lit before Shabbos, and all the other activities were, at worst case, they were D'Rabbanos. But they wanted to just emphasize how great Hillel was and his love for Torah, that such a person could end up putting himself into a condition which for you and I would not be appropriate. But he was totally unaware of the fact that there was a danger here. And therefore, in this case, even though he, so to speak, deliberately put himself into that position, nobody forced him, we would still violate the Shabbos if we had to. They didn't have to, on a Doraisa level, for the sake of such a great person, because his greatness is such that he didn't deliberately try to endanger his life. He just felt that he absolutely had to learn Torah. In any event, we now have an answer to the Taina of the Anim. No matter how poor you are, you're not poorer than Hillel, and you can dedicate yourself to Torah. Ashir Omrim Lo, Mipnei Malo Asakta B'Torah. Spent all your time with business deals and finances, stocks and bonds. You didn't spend any time on Torah. And in Omer, he's going to give you the answer. Ashir Yisi B'Torah Yisi B'Nechasai. I was too preoccupied with my finances. Omer Lo Klum Ashir Yisi Rabbi Lazar Ben Charso. Were you wealthier than Rabbi Lazar Ben Charso? He was a fabulously wealthy individual, and we'll see exactly how wealthy he is in just a second. And despite of that, he dedicated himself Yoma V'Layla to Torah study. How wealthy was Rabbi Elazar Ben Charsom? Amr Olav al Rabbi Elazar Ben Charsom. He inherited from his father 1,000 cities on the seashore. Ukenegnom elef sfinos bayam, and 1,000 yachts, ships at sea. Nevertheless, how did he spend his time? He hired other people, and he himself, he would take a flask of flour, throw it over his shoulder. He would have enough food to last him for a period of time. And he would travel from one town, one city to another, one province to another, in order to study the Torah. And a true Talmud Chacham, it's a lomed mikol adam. And he had Torah to learn from many different people in different cities. Imagine, he had workers in every city, and they didn't recognize him. Also, Garia, they said, look, start working here. We need you. We're short, we're understaffed. He said to them, Hanichuni, please leave me, Torah, and leave me to study Torah. He was so dedicated to Torah that his own workers, his employees, did not recognize Amrulo, Chaye Rabbi Elazar ben Charsa. On the life, we swear on the life of our master. We're not going to let you go unless you get down to work. He never had a spare day during his life to check out these avodim and to get to recognize them, and they to recognize them. So this will be a prosecution against the usher who claims he had no time to study Torah. What's his answer? The Rasha is a person who lives a lustful life, an immoral life. He's there with the women, he's having a good time. Im Omer Na'isi, look, I was a very good-looking fellow. I couldn't overcome my evil inclination. The women were after me, so to speak, and the passions inside me overcame. Omerlo, Plum Na'isa Yosef. Were you more good-looking than Yosef? Omerlo al Yosef HaTzadik, B'chol Yom V'yom Ha'isa Eches Potifar, Mishtadlaso B'dvar. She tried to seduce him with words on a daily basis. Begadim Shalov Shalom Shachris, Lo, Love Shalom Arvis. She would change her clothes into a different wardrobe from the morning to the evening, trying to entice him. Maybe a different set of clothes would entice him. Begadim Shalov Shalom Arvis, Lo, Love Shalom Shachris. And what she wore at night, she didn't wear in the morning. Amrlo. She said to Yosef, Ishamali, please, I would like you to come and be with me. And Amrlo Lav, he refused. He did not want to commit this immoral act with a married woman. Amrlo, Hareini Chovsh, now she gets rough with him. I, after all, am the wife of your master, and I have the authority, Chovashtecha, Bebeis Hasurim, I'll have you locked up. Amrlo, Hashem Matir Asur. God will free those who are imprisoned. He expressed, as Yosef always did, his absolute bitachon in the Ribono Shel Olam. She now threatens him again. Hareini kofefes komoscha. I am going to bend your proud statue. You're being so prideful. And he responded, Hashem zokef kufuf. Hareini misame yeseinecha. I'll have your eyes blind. Hashem pokechi. Nasnalo elef kikrei kesed. Now she tries a different approach. Maybe bribe him. Lishmoy leh. Lishkav etzel lios ima. That he should listen to her, comply, and lie beside her. V'lo rotza lishmoy leh. And he still refused to listen to her enticements. Gemara now analyzes this double phrase: Lishkov etzlo lios ima. Lishkov etzlo biolma zeh lios ima liolma ba. Let's be together in this world, lie together, and we will be together in the next world. And basically, what Yosef is refusing, he doesn't want to be with her in the next world, because if he'll be with her in this world, then which part of the next world will he be in? It'll be in Gehenna. Nimtza hil machayves hanim, Rabbi Elazar ben Charsa machayves hashirim, Yosef machayev es harish. This brings us now to the Mishnah on the bottom of Daf Lamed Hey Amud Beis. The Mishnah now continues its description of the avoda of Yom Kippurim, and we start now with the par of the Kohen Gadol and the vidui that the Kohen Gadol would recite on the par. And this par is what we call a chatos, and it's purchased with the private funds of the Kohen Gadol. This is his personal paro shel Kohen Gadol, the kapara through this chatos, which would be effectuated, would be vis-a-vis himself, the Kohen Gadol, the family of the Kohen Gadol, and Achiv HaKohanim, his colleagues, Kohanim, if, heaven forbid, they ate kodshim or entered into the Mikdash b'tumah in a state of contamination. Bolo Eitzel Paro, now the Kohen Gadol comes close to his par in order to recite vidui. Now keep in mind that the vidui has to take place in the location of the shechita. Wherever the shechita is, that's where the vidui is. Where was the par located? Paro haya omed bein ulam lamizbeach. Now the ulam is the chamber where you enter into the heichal. Outside the ulam was the azara, and the mizbeach was in the azara. And there's a certain area between the mizbeach and the ulam. Now, what we do have to know in terms of directions is the following. The ulam was an area of 22 amos. I'm sorry, let's start again. The distance between the mizbeach and the ulam was 22 amos. And that's where the Mishnah has the par situated. But what we have to know is our northeast, south, and west directions here. And we'll actually get into this more tomorrow, but just as an introduction, the Mizbeach was situated north-south, whereas when you enter into the Ulam, and from there into the Heichal and into the Kodesh Kodashim, you're going from east to west. And the par is now in that area between the Ulam that goes north to south between the Mizbeach that goes north and south and the Ulam that goes east to west. Rosho Ladarom, Upanav Lamarav. The head of the par was faced towards the south. The head, but the face was turned towards the west. And the Gemara is going to ask, how did they achieve this? HaKohen Omed b'Mizrach upanav lamarav. He's standing in the east, facing west, which means that if the head, I shouldn't say the head because that's a little confusing, but the face, because they turned the face around, I don't want to give away the whole sugya, but the face was turned towards the west, and therefore the Kohen was also like standing next to the par, facing the west, facing the Kodesh, and somech shteyadav olav. He would lean his two hands on the head of the par. And there was no hefsek between his hands and the skin of the head of the par. He's ready for vidu. This was the nusach of his vidu. On Hashem, and at this point, he enunciates the holiest name of Hashem, Yud Kei Vav Kei, and the people who would listen would respond by saying Baruch Shem Kvod Malchus Olam Vayed. The Kachayomer. This was the exact, precise nusach of his vidu. Avisi Pashati Chatasi Lifanecha Aniu Basi. Now this is very interesting because this is the sheet of Rabbi Meir. Although the Mishnah doesn't mention any dissenting view, it's not our minhag. We accepted a different sheet, and that's what the Sugya Sagamar is going to be about, because our vidu starts Chet, Avon, and Pesha. Here it's Avon, Pesha, V'Chet. reflecting the Shita of Rabbi Meir. On Hashem, he begs God, Kaper nola vonos ulepshoim ulechatoi. Again, the same exact sequence. Avon, Pesha, and Chet. Shavisi v'shapashati v'shachatasi ufanecha. Again, very consistent. Ani ubesi, I myself and my entire household. Kakasu v'toras Moshe avdecha. And this is where Rabbi Meir proves the sequence from Moshe Rabbeinu. And we're going to quote now the vidui of Moshe Rabbeinu in this following post. Ki b'yom hazeh yichaper aleichem b'chol chatosechem l'fnei Hashem titor. And when he recited the name of Hashem, Heim onim achra baruch shem kvod malchuso li olam voed. So here we're up to the Gemara on Daf Lamed Vav, which is Mirza Hashem, our Daf for tomorrow. I just want to reiterate, before I wish you a Chag Sameach, that yesterday's Daf, which was Lamed Dalid, is already up on YU Torah. If you should have the occasion, if not today, it's Erev Yontif, sometime in the future. Just wanted you to know it's there, it's accessible. And B'li Neder, tomorrow's Daf, which is Lamed Vav, I'm going to try to do the same so that on Yom Shlishi, which is Isru Chag, we will be ready to learn Daf Lamed Zayin. So tomorrow's Daf is Lamed Vav, and Isru Chag Lamed Zayin. So I wish you a great, happy Kabbalah Satorah. It should be a wonderful Shavuos.